Hello, hello, and welcome to our weekly book club episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my awesome co-host is...
Hello, I'm Meagan.
Hey. And so, yes, we host a podcast book club. You are welcome to read along with us, but you definitely don't have to. We're a pretty chill pair here, so what works for you works for us.
Exactly. Although we do have a big update regarding book club. We've done something like 70 plus book club episodes, and this is our final new release for book club because book club is moving to Patreon. So this is our last week here, and will then be our last live reminder of, hey, come join Patreon to continue the book club conversation. But keep tuning in for the next few Thursdays because throughout the month of August, we'll be replaying one of our earlier book club series about this book called Normal Sucks by Jonathan Mooney. Love, love, love Jonathan Mooney. Love all of his books. And we'll wrap it up with an episode that's an author visit by Jonathan himself. He was our first ever guest. So I think now, too, if you go back and listen to that, if you're used to our current episode, you're going to be like, wow, these two are brand new at podcasting. And yes, we were. We 100% were. We are still shocked and thrilled that he came on and talked about neurodivergent affirming life and learning with us. It was amazing. I will ride that high for a really long time.
Yeah, true story. So yes, in the meantime, head on over to Patreon in general, or if you want, there's a link here, but if you want, you can just Google like Patreon Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. We should be the first thing that comes up. And join us over there. You can join as an all access member. That gets you all of the things and book club, or you can join as just a book club member. Either way, both will include different perks, but they offer a live discussion and support and like this homeschool community with other like-minded homeschool parents. So we are really excited to make book club more engaged and community focused. And yes, our first book is about like AI and education, and I'm not big on AI. I don't like AI. Meagan can be the first to tell you anytime she's like, let's try, I'm like, I know I can't get rid of it, but not yet. Don't make me use it. But the reality is it's not going anywhere. And so I think it's going to be a really good discussion to kind of read this book and noodle it and have a talk about how we're using it or how we see using it and how we're going to prepare our kids for it. But then also, if you don't read the book, again, it is totally okay. If you're interested in this topic and you want to hear the conversation and maybe weigh in, but you're really like, I just don't have the bandwidth to read and I don't have an informed opinion yet, but I want to hear a bunch of other people who have taken the time to think about that. Like, come join us. We don't judge. And truth be told, that's usually how I am in a book club. I don't get to do it in this one because Meagan kind of expects me to read and show up prepared. It is what it is. You can totally come without reading if you don't have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. So our episode today will be wrapping up our series that we've been on for quite a few weeks now on secular resources to help your kids and maybe a little bit yourself, right? These books are great. Understand the really complicated questions surrounding religion. So we are a secular podcast. We are not going to try and save you over the next 40 minutes to 50 minutes or however long this episode is. There will be no speaking in tongues and amens coming out of us, we promise. But we will be talking about religion from a secular perspective.
Yeah, right. Religion, not really our jam. We definitely we like to recognize that. Like in my home, like we don't church at all. But the reality is kids are still going to ask big questions, right? And I mean, this stuff, it is so prevalent just in society in general, right? These questions about like, what is heaven? What happens to the family pet after it dies? Or, depending, like, why does grandma's house have so many crosses that it feels like she's prepping for an exorcism, right? I mean, like, that's why our recent book club episodes have really focused on resources that get recommended all of the time, and in like secular groups they get recommended often, and we wanted to make sure that we tackled those. We did some reviews of them so that you have an idea of what's great, maybe somewhat not so great kind of things, some little like not necessarily trigger warnings, but like, hey, heads up, you might want to look at this or know about that, or those kinds of things. And so hopefully these resources will help you kind of tackle a lot of these questions from a secular academic perspective.
Okay, I laughed so hard with your exorcism comment because it reminded me we toured a house when we were moving to Austin in Texas. And Austin is a little blue dot in a very Texas-sized situation. Okay. So you know how when you're going to list your house, all the real estate experts tell you to depersonalize your house, right? You're supposed to take down your family pictures and just make it as neutral as possible so that it kind of works for everybody. Anybody can walk into that house and envision themselves living there. So apparently to that family, crosses are neutral, right?
Yeah.
There was an entire wall, like an entire wall of crosses in this one house. One of the bathrooms had shower curtain that had Bible verses on it. I mean, it reminded me there was this scene, the old Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, like the original one way back in the day. You remember Carson Kressley, the blonde guy who was on there? And I think they were doing a wedding or something and they had to go into a church. And they go to walk in and Carson like puts his toe over the threshold of the church and like tapped his foot on the ground a couple of times and then made this relieved face like, oh, phew, like I didn't burst into flames going into the church building, right? And I'm like, that's how I felt touring that house. I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was like, there is not enough sage in all of Texas for us to be able to live in this house after what has gone on here. So it was an experience, much like Texas was. Oh, okay. So I have to ask, before we start the book really quick, can I give you a small update on The Good Place? Because I brought it up either last week or the week before. I don't remember.
Yeah. Sure. Lay it on me. What's going on with The Good Place? I've been wondering if that should be like our new like family watch. So lay it on me.
It's deep, right? It's a comedy and there's plenty of funny in there, but it is freaking deep. So we've gotten to the point, spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear the spoiler alert, I'm in season 3 now, so I'm beyond the basics. But the really interesting thing is they've just had this revelation where they're kind of analyzing how you get into the good place versus the bad place. And this guy who was an architect of the bad place, he's played by Ted Danson, who is freaking fantastic in this show. And he is trying to figure out what it takes to get into the good place. And so they're doing all this stuff and he goes to the accountant's office and they're trying to figure out the tallying of points because every action you take on Earth has points that go above and beyond and whatever. And then he's like, well, when was the last time somebody got into the good place? And through this series of questions and answers, come to find out nobody's gotten in like 500 years. And he's like, you mean like Harriet Tubman? And he starts giving out like some examples. How have none of these people gotten into the good place? So his original thought is that it's been contaminated or infiltrated by the bad place, right? By the demons in the bad place, that they've like messed with the scoring system or something. And then come to find out that that's not it, but that the world has changed so much that there's so many unintended consequences of every single action that you're accumulating negative points without realizing it. So for example, they look at this one scenario because there's files on everybody, right? So they look at this one scenario of this guy who brought his mother roses at one point, and he got X amount of points for that. But then another person does it however many years later and gets way less points. And they're like, oh, because now we're realizing that, you know, the flowers were grown using chemicals that kill the bees and that migrant workers who were exploited picked these flowers and they were shipped from X to X, creating this huge carbon footprint. And the way that the world has evolved, all of these unintended consequences where even when you think you're doing a good thing, there's all these unintended consequences of bad things that are happening. I mean, it's really, really deep. It's on Netflix. It has a thing that says like frequently rewatched. It's got like that little label. Like, I can understand why, because there's so much philosophy in it. I mean, and they go through all these different philosophers throughout history and the way that they look at life and what it is to be a good person and all that kind of stuff. It has been fascinating. I could totally see rewatching it because I feel like last week I mentioned for the Annabelle and Aiden book that I reviewed, I mentioned like you could read this book like 10 times and still come up with different stuff every single time because there was just so much in it. I feel this way about this show that you could definitely watch it multiple times. Some of the writing is so fast and so quick that it would be easy to miss things. And I could totally see rewatching it. So I thought that was just such this light bulb moment, right? Of this, how you do good on earth and how you can try to be a good person, but it's become so much more difficult because of the way society has evolved. It was fascinating when they kind of came to that revelation. So anyway, still recommend it. It's still pretty good. I think I've got like one episode left. It's getting close to the end. Maybe I'll start it again. We'll see. But it's definitely a show, like, I haven't been able to put it on as like background noise, which is kind of one of my jams when I'm really hard at work. You have to pay attention to this show. There's so much in there as far as kind of these, it almost reminds me like a double agent spy movie where you're trying so hard to figure out who the person is really allied with and who they're working on behalf of, because there's so much like, if this is good, then that's bad. If that's bad, then this is good, that it flips on its head so many times. You're like, oh my goodness. So there's a lot happening, but it's pretty
interesting. And so how many seasons are there?
There's 3. I'm 99% sure there's 3. Hold on. I'm going to check really quick. As long as Netflix isn't being cranky with me. My husband has he's the one who like, quote unquote, owns the Netflix account. And he's in Aruba. So his IP address is Aruba. And then we're in Europe. And so all the time Netflix is like, you're robbing us. And I'm like, we're married. So it's the whole thing. Oh no, there's 4 seasons. Oh, I have way more to go than I thought.
Okay.
Oh, I'm excited. We expect more updates in the future. Okay.
Yeah, well, but I mean, even so, I was just thinking like the last one that we started that we're kind of struggling, and it's mostly on me when I am really busy with things because of the health problems that I have. My head has a really hard time with TV. So we've taken a big break. But we've been trying to watch Gilmore Girls, and it was way more seasons and episodes than I realized it was. And so we like halfway through and we way slowed down. About 4 seasons is definitely easier. The other one, that's it. It's a little bit easier. Like my kiddo really likes Big Bang Theory. He wants to go back and watch it like for a 3rd time. And I'm like, this is so many seasons. So many seasons.
These are short too. I'm looking, the each season opener is a little bit longer. It's like 40 something minutes, but the average episode is 22 minutes. So they're pretty quick and easy to get through. So yeah, it's really good. Like it relates to all of what we've been talking about in these episodes in a way. And I didn't know that when I started watching it. It was just like this cosmic alignment that I started watching it while we were having these discussions about the afterlife and all kinds of stuff. So it's been a surprising and pleasant compliment.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, with all of that said, it lines up nicely. Meagan's got What Happens When We Die. And today I'm covering Sapiens, Our Human Evolution. So we're going to do like we did last week, where we each kind of cover one book. And so let's dive in and get to it. So like I said, it's called Sapiens based on Homo sapiens, right? And it's called Our Human Evolution. Now, if you listened to last week's review of Oh My Gods and Oh the Things We Believed, you'll already know this, but these books are similar to those, where it includes like this like high level rhyming text that's bigger and bolder on each page. And you can read through that and just do that. And it gives the text is really nice. It's lovely. And it gives good information. If you're doing it with younger kids, you could totally do that with just the younger kiddos. But these books are full of so much additional detail. And that is this smaller, less obvious text that's kind of woven into the images on the page. It's not as bold and in your face. I definitely have to turn on the light in the bedroom to be able to read it because I'm officially that old. And with that in mind, if you're listening and you were thinking you were going to try using like the free Kindle Unlimited version or some kind of ebook version, please don't. It's like basically impossible to read if you do the ebook version. I'm not sure why it's optimized so poorly, but you really probably need to get a hard copy of these books. And that's unfortunate because it doesn't seem like a lot of libraries have them. And I've yet to find a bookstore that carried them in store. Though if you've got a great children's bookstore near you, I would definitely ask them if they could get it for you or if they don't order it in. Because I think they're great. I think they have a lot of information. And I'm going to just put this out there with the Sapiens one. I learned so much. I could use this as a textbook and go back. There's so many things in here I had absolutely no idea about. There's so much information to absorb. I will be, unless you actually studied this kind of thing in university, I would be shocked if you read this book and you were like, oh, I knew all of that. Like, truly, literally shocked if you knew all of the things in here.
I have Sapiens. It's on my bookshelf here. I just haven't read it yet because it wasn't the one that I covered for this week, and it's been a busy week. But now I'm super excited to read it because I didn't know anything about evolution until I got to college because I had a religious education, and I knew nothing about genetics, evolution, nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. And so, yeah, I'm going to have to read this. I'll probably learn a ridiculous amount from it. Now I'm super excited.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's so much in here. And so I think this is a great book for anyone. And we talked about it before. They look like they're meant for little kids because they're these really pretty picture books, but really the information in them is great for like all ages of kids. You could easily use it with middle schoolers, and you could totally use it with high schoolers, and then deep dive the specific different things as like your jumping off point. It's just because it looks pretty and it looks fun, it doesn't mean that it's only for the littles in your life. In fact, the vast majority of it's going to go over their head. Okay, so that said, this one starts on pages 2 and 3. It starts off talking about species and all the different species that are out there in the animal kingdom and birds and that kind of thing. And already, like, straight off the top, there are loads of additional facts beyond the basic writing text. So just keep that in mind. This book is really heavy on those. Then page 4 kind of sets it up like Lucy's going to tell us the story. And if you don't know, Lucy was the skeleton that was discovered in the 1970s in Ethiopia, and she dates back about 3.2 million years ago. So very old, one of the first like closer to human evolutions that we found. And so, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Super a side note, I went to Ethiopia. Like, my biggest goal was to go see Lucy. I did not get to see Lucy. She's in a museum there. I was told by men with very large guns that I wasn't allowed to see Lucy. And there was like, it was not really clear exactly why I couldn't see Lucy, but they stuck to that for a few days. So I finally gave up and was like, I don't really think I'm going to keep going up against the men with very large guns trying to see something in a museum. Like, Lucy's probably not worth it. But if you ever make it to Ethiopia and you've got the free time, you should go see if you have better luck. They kept asking for my Ethiopian driver's license. So I'm not sure how much that matters. But
intriguing.
Yeah. And like, I'm not Ethiopian, so I don't have that. I have my passport. They're like, no, Ethiopian driver's license. Like, but I still don't have an Ethiopian driver's license. I didn't drive here, like I had a driver. Anyway.
Maybe they thought like maybe they thought you were British and you were coming to steal Lucy or something. They're like, if we let this lady in, Lucy's totally going to be on a boat to England and in a museum in no time.
Damn Brits always stealing our best artifacts.
They could have pyramids back, but they'll get Lucy.
Yep. There you go. So on the next page, on page 5, there's a quote that's in that rhyming text that I thought was really interesting, the way it sets the stage. It says, the human story starts like the world's. You should know, with a loud, big bang, followed by a big toe. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that's a fun way to set up what's about to happen. And so then just like the next several pages, it talks about the evolution of the primate to a new species that had a big toe that allowed it to walk upright, and kind of how that evolution happened. Again, at very high level because it's written for kids, but easy to dive like way into it. And then pages 11, 12 go on to talk about like many types of human species that developed. Like it just goes on and on. Pages 12 and 13 talk about how a volcano erupted, causing a 10-year winter, and that forced many species to flee. And at that point, we're talking specifically about the African continent. But then it went on. I did not know about the 10-year winter due to a volcano. And I had no idea about this, but apparently at that time when they were fleeing, only one female successfully passed down her genes, making her the female ancestor of all humans today. And they call her mitochondrial Eve, based on kind of like the Adam and Eve story, right? And so I was like, oh, I have no idea that like we all trace back to a single female that like passed down her genes to everyone. Talk about the ultimate ancestral thing.
Shallow thing. Right?
On pages 14, 15, they talk about different Homo species and how and why they disappeared. And how we ended up kind of where we are. So then on 16, it brings up the idea of evolutionary biology, which is one of those things like I've always found this interesting. I think it's a great thing to look at and learn about. And talks about things like why some people grew narrowed eyes to help them see, and why some people developed whiter skin to aid in vitamin D absorption. And like just a great jumping off point for some like looking into those kinds of things. I feel like in a lot of ways, that's even more important these days, with racism being so rampant and just out there and accepted, like teaching our kids these kinds of differences. Yeah.
There was a mom at our homeschool co-op in North Carolina who told me that racism had been solved, that we fixed that. So did you not?
I didn't get that memo.
Oh, okay.
No.
Yeah. I was under the impression. Yeah. Her husband worked for the newspaper too. So that was alarming.
Well, then she must be right.
She's got the no, right?
Yeah.
I literally was standing there and I was like, I don't know how to respond to that statement. I was like, this is the crap. Like in our Tuesday episodes, when we talk about if you've been struggling to find your people in the homeschool community, those are the kinds of things we're referencing. I think it's not the first and only time I've heard crap like that. And I'm sure you've heard your fair amount too. So yeah, I just popped back into my head when I was like, oh yeah, I totally remember having that conversation and standing there being like, I think I'm just blinking and blank faced because I don't really know what to say.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Pages 18 and 19, they touch on a little bit on how we developed morality. So that ties in for me. I think if you're really wanting to dive into that, I liked our earlier series. Aiden and Annabelle does talk about that a little in some of their other books, but I liked our earlier series from David McAfee or however you pronounce it, and Chuck Harrison. So definitely go look at those if you want to do a bigger deep dive on that, because it just barely glances over it. Page 20, it talks about how 11,500 years ago, farming started independently in several different places.
Interesting.
And then like how that led to people like finally starting to settle more in one place. So we saw kind of the end of a lot of nomadic culture, or at least the beginning of people settling and building like civilizations. On pages 24 and 25, this is one of those things. So it introduces the idea of scientific discovery. I personally thought that arguably it introduced it at a later time, kind of on the timeline of history, than maybe it really happened in a lot of cultures, because there's a very good argument to be made that many great discoveries were made outside of Europe many years before Europeans discovered those same things. And so I did feel like this book fell a little short on that. I would really encourage you, if you're going to use this, to do a little bit of a deep dive into many of the scientific discoveries that were made in Africa and South America and China many years before Europeans were like, I have discovered this thing and I'm white, so everyone will believe it was me.
Coincidentally, I've also just gotten back from a trip to Africa, but that's neither here nor there.
Right. Okay. And then on page 26 and 27, there's a couple things. So first, let me read the text because I thought it was really nice. It says, we're all the same, but different. We're different, but the same. We come in different colors, but we share the same name. Despite the borders and divisions we all like to construct, we are all children of Lucy. We all came from Africa. And it doesn't rhyme quite as nicely as the rest of the book, but I think especially with kids, this is a great way of getting this idea of evolution across and not, like we're not trying to say, oh, I don't see color. It's not about that. This is about like evolution and how human beings evolved and the species that led up to the humans that we know today. So I liked that. I liked the way they laid it out. That said, the end of this book, just like the other ones that we reviewed, has photos, again, real photos of children included in the back. And this time they're in the shape of the continents, but almost all of them are white, again, which is something that we'd noticed before. I think they list the names in the back of a whole bunch of people saying special thank yous to them. So I'm guessing, and we probably should have proactively reached out and clarified and asked them, but we just didn't think of it ahead of time. I'm guessing people opted in to having their image shared. And so it was a combination of both their network and who they had access to, as well as who was like, yes, include my information in your book that's like clearly anti-religious and secular. And so it was a self-selected group. I don't think they were specifically being assholes who only included primarily white people, but it's obvious, right? Like the African continent looks to have one Black child on it. Like, okay. And then Asia. So like China, the Koreas, Vietnam, Cambodia, Japan, like Asia has a couple, 2, 3 that look like maybe of Asian or even mixed Asian heritage. So I just felt like they really missed an opportunity there. And I think if you're going to have things like this in your home, it's important to make sure you have conversations with your children about the fact that that opportunity was missed. And that's not what these places look like. It's not a true representation.
Yeah. The book that I read for this week too about what happens when we die has a similar situation. Again, it just seems to be kind of the theme throughout these books. The only difference is in this one, some of the faces are in bubbles. And so they have filters put over them that kind of make them look sepia, but sepia, like that sepia feel, but in different colors. So there's like a green, a purple, a blue, whatever. So it does make it a little tougher to see, but you can still kind of get the point that it's not very diverse. So same concept in mind. Rather than address it again separately, I'll just back you up on that one.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our first book for this week. I have covered for this week What Happens When We Die, which was also a great book. Before we do that, if we could just ask you a huge, 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 huge favor, wherever you are listening to us, if you could give us a like, a follow, a review, share an episode with somebody, whatever it is that you do, just any more exposure that we can pull in, because it is so, so hard to find secular, progressive, like-minded homeschoolers. And we're out there. There's tons of us out there, but it's harder to kind of coagulate because we don't have Bible study or youth group. Youth group is the biggie, right? We don't have kind of that as our sticking point for meeting people and getting together with people. It just makes it that much harder to build connection. So the more we can kind of pump the algorithm and be like, hey, we exist, you're not alone, the better. So anything you can do as far as a like, a follow, review, we are always so excited. So thank you for that. All right. So what happens when we die? So I loved last week's book that I did. We kind of have been doing something different this week and last week, where we each pick a book. I loved last week's book. I love the artistry. I love the writing style. This is no different. It's fantastic. I absolutely love it. Totally a valuable resource. I did not have these available when my kids were younger, and I would have absolutely loved this for some of the really complicated questions. So this is great. I did inadvertently yesterday, I think it was, could have been the day before, start to get a little teary because I was unpacking. We've just come back to Portugal and I was unpacking and putting some stuff up. And I was thinking about some of the conversations we've had in previous weeks with the last series that we did and then this one. And, we kind of talked about that thought. Why is this thought of an afterlife so appealing? And, we talked about it. I have someone in my family who lost a very, very late term baby. And I understand. And then she went from no religion to like full on Team Jesus, which is super ironic because we're Jewish. And I was like, I get it, right? I mean, her Bible study group tells her she's going to hold her baby one day, right? And hold her living child someday. I get it. I get the appeal, right? And so I was just kind of like thinking through those conversations that we've been having over the past few weeks. And then Amanda saying worm food came into my head, and like when we die, we just become worm food. And I was like, oh. But I was thinking about it. So I was unpacking, and out of the suitcase came my soulmate dog, her little urn with her ashes. And I was like, you know, there is, and it's so ridiculous because it's not a human child, right? I mean, I'm not comparing the loss of my soulmate dog to my sister-in-law's situation that was just so devastating, you know, not at all. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, is it appealing? Or like, you know, the day that like Sunday Waffles leaves us, like to be like, take good care of her. They're together now. I mean, it feels good, right? I can understand like the need behind that reassurance. And so I was like putting her on the shelf, and I was like, she's not worm food because she's in this jar, but here you go.
I mean,
she's still here.
Part of her's in that jar.
Hey.
Mother dogs are in that jar.
I paid for private cremation, and there's no way I got ripped off. Okay. None. Okay. All right. Going with that.
Yeah. I'll let you have it.
Thank you. We'll go with that. So, all right. So this book starts with two quotes that I thought were great. It's originally, I thought that they were kind of endorsements of the book. You know how sometimes other authors will write a little forward, or not even a forward, but just kind of be like, I loved this book, kind of the short little quote or whatever. And originally I thought it was that, but it wasn't. They were just statements that these individuals had made that related to the topic. So it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I love. I would listen to that man read the phone book, and Stephen Fry. So they were great. That was kind of a solid introduction. This book had a little bit of a different flow because then it goes into kind of a short story. It's not a short story because that implies like characters and things like that, but it's kind of like a lengthy blurb, a page or two. I'm talking about the fact that humans cannot experience death because in order to have an experience, you have to be alive. So these stories or these images that come from movies and things of you like levitating from the bed or, you know, loitering around after the fact or something like that are not real because you are not alive. You cannot experience those things. And so it's very cut and dry on that fact from the get-go. It's like the worm food thing. It's like, no, not happening. Right. So basically the message at the start of the book is stop focusing on death, because when it happens, you're not even going to know what's happening, right? You're gone. So it doesn't make any difference. So instead, just focus on living your life. Then there's another kind of blurb section that goes into what it means to live a life that matters. And so I liked that part as well. Then Annabelle and Aiden swoop in, who are our main characters, who kind of take us on a journey that's more appropriate for younger kids. They have an experience that I think most people have had in their life where you're sitting at home and all of a sudden there's like this bang and it scares the crap out of you and a bird has flown into your window. So they have that experience and they go outside to check on the bird, and it talks about the fact that its beak is crooked and not breathing and this and that. And so they kind of realize that the bird has died, and it launches into this journey of like, well, what happened to the bird besides the window? What happened to the bird that committed suicide in the window? Yeah. Inadvertence. Maybe their mom keeps a really clean window.
This is why you shouldn't clean your windows that often. Right? Like, we got your back. Don't clean your windows. All of those smudges and fingerprints and dog nose prints on your windows, you're helping the environment.
Exactly. Right. So, so they kind of, what happens to the bird? They contemplate a good place and a bad place happening after life. But of course, then it swoops back in with there is no good place or bad place. You're just dead. There is a kind of a funny anecdote in there that says like bullies would go to a bad place where the beds are full of ants and all they get to eat is toenail soup all the time, which I thought was kind of funny. But I know it's gross, but just funny. But I also, there's this trope in books about bullies that kind of also drives me insane, because I feel like personally that it's conditioning children to just be like, well, bullies exist, so get over it and accept it. Like, it's that thing, like, you know, when people object to you homeschooling and saying like, well, how will they learn to deal with bullies? And it's like, oh, right, because that's a reason to go to school, to have my kid be mercilessly picked on and get in for all these different things. So the bully trope, I feel like, is overdone in a lot of books, but in this one, it was like the way it was referenced, I thought was okay. And it was kind of funny and kind of cute. They address near-death experiences in the book and how people have come back from these quote unquote near-death experiences and explained the bright light in the tunnel and the whole thing. And so they talk about the fact that that is unsubstantiated. Like they leave no room. There's no wiggle room in this book. It's like, this is not true. These do not happen. But then what's really interesting is they do talk about, from a scientific perspective, what happens to your body after you die. And so beyond worm food. And so they talk about the fact that the energy of your body never dies and that it goes on, the atoms and the molecules and things like that. I am not a sciencey person. I did not have a strong science education. I learned creation science in school, which is not science. And so my knowledge of atoms and molecules is somewhat limited. But it was really interesting. They loop in the laws of thermodynamics and talk about how energy cannot be created or destroyed and all the things that happen to your body after that. And then there's a conversation about like, yeah, it's our body, but it's changing because it's decomposing basically. And the book then talks about the fact that your body is changing even when you're alive. And so it's talking about like how long it takes for the lining of your stomach to continuously regenerate, how long it takes for hair follicles to produce and things like that. And so it's talking, and it's really cool. It's done in the background text, the way other things are done in this book. And so we see arteries and different parts of the body, and it's kind of woven into the parts of the body, the way that they discuss it. So it's pretty darn cool. I liked it. And then it kind of wraps with this point, which I thought was really cool. And it says, one thing that makes things special is knowing that they end. That's what makes our lives so precious. And so it kind of puts this, it's okay that it's a one and done. It's okay that it's going to come to an end. That's what it's all about. And so the point is to live a life that matters, have great experiences, live your life fully. And when it ends, you won't even know it. That's basically the message of the book.
Yeah. Interesting. I find it interesting that this book is so cut and dry on things. And we saw this a lot with the last series that we did, not before we did Aiden and Annabelle, right? Like a lot of things that as you're reading it, you've just been so conditioned to be like, well, you don't make it like, you don't draw these clear lines in the sand, or you don't make this reference or this comparison because other people might be offended, or there are a lot of other people who feel differently. And so we did that. Yeah, that like just really like, nope, this is how it is. And to have it in a book, it can be a little startling and sometimes even a little uncomfortable the first time you read it. And then I know for me, I usually find that when I go back and read through it a second time, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But that first time you're like, oh, like the record scratch, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I had that. I was at my husband's aunt and uncle's house one time for dinner. I was in New York City on business and they lived there. They've since passed away. And I went over to their house for dinner. And somehow, I mean, this was a long, long time ago. We didn't have kids. And somehow the conversation came up that we had a dog. And his aunt said, you know, the trouble with dogs. And I was thinking she was going to say something about like, you have to go home all the time to like make sure they get out and that they're not too lonely and stuff, because we both worked full time. So, and we were young, we were in our 20s. So we joked, my parents had a dog named Buster at the time. And we used to call my parents' house Camp Buster, because on Friday nights we would take her and drop her off at Camp Buster so that we could go out, because it felt unfair. We'd worked all day at work and then to go out all night and party. It was like, it didn't seem right. So she'd have a sleepover at Camp Buster. And so that's kind of where my mind went, was like, oh, the time commitment and the responsibility, or maybe the financial commitment or something like that. No, she was an older woman, Central European, from the era of, surviving the Holocaust, the whole thing. And so she says, the problem with pets? And I'm like, what? And she goes, you get attached to them and then they die. And I was like, oh, that was so startling over dinner. Oh, I mean, I remember the conversation. I could tell you what I was wearing. Like, that's how startling it was. And it's been like 20 years. So yeah, the book has more of that vibe. That's like, life is great, but you're going to die. And what you do, nothing else happens and your body decomposes, but it's told in a really nice way. And the artwork is great.
That's awesome. That's one of my favorite sayings. I say it all the time. Like, well, life sucks and then you die.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like that's okay because and the joke is, right, like if you listen to our podcast at all, I'm like the ultimate silver linings person. It like truly it annoys the shit out of my mom. She's like, here comes Amanda and her silver linings. It's exhausting. But then yeah, like whenever things are like not going well, I'm like, well, life sucks and then you die.
We're eating podcast merch that's like worm food.
And you got to have the snarky stuff and the uplifting stuff, right? Inclusive minds, change the world. Worm food, homeschool mom simple food.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Oh my goodness.
All right. So that about wraps us up. I'm not sure we need to say much else.
On the note of worm food, goodbye. No.
Okay. All right. Seriously, though, we are excited to share normal sucks with you over the next several weeks, right? And then, yeah, come and hang out with us during our regular Tuesday episodes. We cover a whole bunch of homeschool related topics, all kinds of different things. If we have an episode or if there's something that you want us to cover and you can't find it in our catalog, like drop us a message somewhere. We would love to do some research and talk about whatever you're interested in knowing, right? We definitely keep an eye out, but we're totally, if you're like, oh, there's this thing and I really don't know, like obviously come join us in Patreon and have conversations with us and that sort of thing. But if it's something you're looking for, I'm sure other people are curious too. So let us know. And then yeah, in the meantime, we hope to see you over on Patreon for our conversations, our lives, and for our new book club format. Yeah.
So have a great rest of your day and happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.